The Lost Ark of the Covenant, 2,600 years of mystery and the top archaeological theories. This is the most powerful and sacred object ever created, the Ark of the Covenant. It vanished without a trace after 1,000 years of documented history. Does it still exist? And if so, where is it hidden? The greatest mystery of the Old Testament. In the vast expanse of human history, few objects hold the magnetic pull, the profound spiritual significance, and the enduring mystery of the Ark of the Covenant. This is not merely an antique religious artifact. It is the single most sacred object in the history of the ancient world, a piece of furniture crafted by divine command, designed to serve as the literal throne of the Creator of the universe. It was the physical heart of the fledgling nation of Israel, the palpable manifestation of God's presence, and a source of both divine protection and terrifying judgment. For nearly 1,000 years, its documented journey was central to the identity, warfare, and spiritual life of the Hebrew people. Yet, at a single brutal moment in history, during a siege that brought Jerusalem to its knees, the Ark of the Covenant vanished. It disappeared without a definitive archaeological record, without a clear biblical epitaph, and without a trace of its ultimate fate. The mystery surrounding the Ark is profound because its absence is as historically documented as its presence. The quest to find it has ignited the imaginations of archaeologists, theologians, novelists, and treasure hunters for centuries, inspiring global expeditions, secret society myths, and most famously Hollywood adventure films. The narrative of the Ark transcends mere religious history. It speaks to a deep, universal human yearning for a direct physical connection to the divine. The very notion that the ultimate expression of God's covenant with humanity could be hidden in a dark cave, buried beneath a ruined temple, or sequestered in a remote monastery holds an irresistible allure. However, our exploration will move beyond the sensationalism of fiction and delve into the verifiable historical and theological facts. We acknowledge the profound risks inherent in studying a subject so prone to speculation. Therefore, our focus will be on archaeological sobriety and doctrinal clarity. We will treat the Ark's story as a historical puzzle, meticulously examining the biblical texts, the most reliable primary source we possess, for clues regarding its purpose, movements, and the precise moment when the physical object ceased to be part of the historical record. Understanding this divine object's function and its established history is the only way to logically assess the myriad of theories, legends, and archaeological claims regarding its fate and eventual resting place. This quest is not merely a search for lost gold and acacia wood, it is a search for the ultimate meaning of the presence, and subsequently, the absence of God's manifest glory among humanity. Theological and physical anatomy of the Ark. The Ark of the Covenant was unlike any other object ever commissioned. Its design, dimensions, and materials were not left to human whim, but were given directly by Jesus, speaking through the angel of the covenant to Moses on Mount Sinai, as meticulously documented in the book of Exodus, chapter 25. Understanding its anatomy is understanding its theology. Physically, the Ark was a chest, rectangular in shape, constructed of shittim wood, acacia, a wood common to the Sinai Desert and noted for its durability. Its prescribed dimensions were 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. The entire chest was meticulously overlaid with pure gold, both inside and out, symbolizing the purity and divinity of the contents. Gold rings were affixed to the four corners, through which poles, also overlaid with gold, were passed. These poles were never to be removed. a testament to the Ark's sanctity and the mandate that it should only be carried, never touched by human hands. Only the Levites were permitted even this proximity. To touch the Ark was to invite instant, fatal judgment, reinforcing its dangerous holiness. The most theologically significant part of the Ark was its lid, known as the Kappareth, or the mercy seat. This was a solid slab of pure gold, upon which were mounted two cherubim facing each other, their wings outstretched, forming a canopy. The space between the cherubim's wings was understood to be the literal dwelling place of the Shekinah, the visible presence and glory of God on earth. It was from this very place that God promised to speak to Moses. It was here, and only here, that the high priest could enter once a year, on the Day of Atonement, to sprinkle sacrificial blood, reconciling the people to the Almighty. The Ark was therefore not a relic container, it was the earthly throne and judgment seat of God himself. Furthermore, the contents of the Ark reinforced its meaning as the centerpiece of the covenant. It contained the two tablets of the covenant, the 10 Commandments, representing the law of God, the pot of manna, representing God's provision and sustenance, and Aaron's rod, that budded, representing the divine selection of the priesthood and authority. These three items collectively symbolize the entire relationship between Jesus and Israel, his perfect law, his sustaining grace, and his appointed leadership. Its function was to make the invisible God tangibly present among his people. The Ark in the Golden Age, from desert to Solomon's Temple. The history of the Ark of the Covenant is the history of Israel itself, acting as a constant spiritual and military presence throughout the entire period of the Exodus and the establishment of the kingdom. The Ark was the nation's rallying point, its military standard, and its theological centerpiece, a source of unparalleled power and absolute authority. During the 40 years of wandering in the desert, the Ark preceded the people, sanctifying their path and ensuring their survival. It was carried by the priests, veiled from public view, traveling under the protection of the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. When the people entered the Promised Land, the Ark's power was demonstrated at the crossing of the Jordan River. As the priests carrying the Ark stepped into the water, the flow of the mighty river ceased, stacking up into a wall, allowing the nation to pass through on dry ground. Its most famous demonstration of power occurred at the Battle of Jericho, where, under divine command, the Ark was carried around the city walls for 7 days, culminating in a triumphant shout that saw the insurmountable stone fortifications miraculously collapse. The Ark was unequivocally the most potent weapon in Israel's arsenal. However, the misuse of its power was met with severe consequence. When the Israelites treated the Ark as a magic charm, hoping to secure victory without obedience to Jesus, they suffered a devastating defeat. The Ark was captured by the Philistines. During its time in the enemy's territory, the Ark proved its self-sufficiency. It caused the statue of the Philistine god Dagon to fall and shatter, and inflicted plagues of tumors and sickness upon the cities that housed it, leading the terrified Philistines to eagerly return the Ark to Israelite territory. The Ark finally achieved a measure of stability under King David, who moved it to Jerusalem with great celebration and eventually housed it in a temporary tent. It was David's son Solomon who fulfilled the dream of building a permanent, magnificent dwelling for the Ark. The first temple, built with unparalleled splendor, housed the Ark in the Holy of Holies, a chamber so sacred that only the high priest could enter, and only once a year. This was the Ark's final, documented, and most sacred resting place, where it remained for centuries until the fateful events that ended the kingdom of Judah. The moment of disappearance, the Babylonian attack, 5087 BCE. The trajectory of the Ark's history tragically culminated in the devastating destruction of the First Temple in 5087 BCE. This event was not merely a military defeat, but a theological catastrophe that forever changed the course of Jewish history and created the ultimate ancient mystery. The decline of the Kingdom of Judah led to the rise of the Neo-Babylonian Empire under King Nebuchadnezzar II. Following a series of rebellions, Nebuchadnezzar enacted his final brutal siege against Jerusalem, culminating in the city's total destruction. The Temple of Solomon, the centerpiece of Jewish worship and the Ark's home, was systematically looted, stripped and burned to the ground. Historical and biblical records meticulously detail the plunder taken from the temple by the Babylonians. The books of 2 Kings 25:13-17 and Jeremiah 52:17-23 provide exhaustive inventory lists of the precious materials and sacred vessels carried off to Babylon: bronze pillars, silver bowls, gold instruments, basins, censers, and spoons. The priests and the people were exiled, and the sanctuary lay in ruins. However, the most striking, the most profound fact concerning this violent sacking is the omission of the Ark of the Covenant from all surviving inventory lists. The single most valuable, historically significant and theologically potent object in the entire kingdom is simply not mentioned among the spoils. This silence gives rise to the permanent historical puzzle. If the Ark was still present in the Holy of Holies, an object overlaid with massive amounts of pure gold, it would undoubtedly have been the Babylonians' most prized trophy, and certainly worth listing. The fact that it is not listed has driven centuries of scholarship and speculation toward two primary possibilities. First, that the Ark was secretly removed from the temple and hidden by pious priests or prophets before the Babylonian destruction, protecting it from both capture and desecration. Second, that the Ark was destroyed during the chaos of the siege, but that the Babylonians melted down its gold and reduced the wooden structure to ash, making it indistinguishable from other ruined temple objects, hence its absence from the detailed looting lists. This ambiguity, a key historical omission, is the source code for every subsequent legend regarding the Ark's lost location. Prophetic silence and theological shift. The disappearance of the Ark of the Covenant did not just create an archaeological mystery, it instigated a profound and permanent theological shift within the religion of Israel. The prophets who lived through the trauma of the exile acknowledged the Ark's absence, but their focus was not on recovering the physical object. It was on the spiritual lesson embedded within its loss. The most telling prophecy comes from Jeremiah, a figure who witnessed the events leading up to the Babylonian destruction. In Jeremiah 3:16, he delivers a stunning prophecy concerning the days when Israel would be restored. "And when you have multiplied and increased in the land, in those days, declares the Lord, they shall no longer say, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. It shall not come to mind or be remembered or missed, nor shall another one be made." This passage is monumental. It suggests that the loss of the Ark was ordained by divine providence, serving as a preparation for a future era where the physical symbol of God's presence would be unnecessary. The focus was shifting from a geographically fixed, material vessel to an internalized, spiritual covenant written upon the heart. When the Jewish people eventually returned from the Babylonian exile and rebuilt the Second Temple, the Holy of Holies was consecrated, but it was empty. It contained no Ark. This absence was a constant, stark reminder of the change in their relationship with Jesus. The priests and people were forced to transition their worship from relying on the tangible golden throne to relying solely on the spoken word of God and the faith in a divine presence that was no longer confined to a single box. This theological pivot was an essential step towards the fulfillment found in the New Covenant, where the law, sustenance, and priesthood, the three items contained within the Ark, would be perfectly embodied and fulfilled in the person of Jesus Christ himself. Thus, the Ark was not simply lost. The need for its physical presence was superseded by a greater spiritual reality, ensuring that the search for the relic would forever be secondary to the understanding of its theological purpose. Archaeological theory. Hidden under the Temple Mount. The most persistent, and perhaps the most complex theory regarding the Ark's location posits that it remains exactly where it was before the destruction, hidden deep beneath the very ground of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. This is the core belief of many Orthodox Jewish groups and several historical preservation societies. The foundation for this theory is rooted not in archaeological excavation, which is politically impossible, but in historical tradition and ancient texts. The most direct piece of scriptural evidence comes from the apocryphal book of Maccabees, 2 4-8, which suggests that the prophet Jeremiah, foreseeing the Babylonian invasion, commanded the priests to take the tabernacle and the ark and hide them in a cave on Mount Nebo, where they would remain until the time that God gathers his people again and shows his mercy. However, the more localized version focuses on the Temple Mount itself. According to this tradition, knowing the destruction was imminent, pious priests or Levites would have utilized the extensive network of tunnels and cisterns beneath the temple plaza. They would have lowered the ark into a pre-designated sealed chamber directly beneath the site of the Holy of Holies. This theory is supported by descriptions from the Mishnah that speak of subterranean passages used for ritual purity, suggesting such a hidden complex existed. The idea is that the ark remains entombed in bedrock, perfectly preserved, waiting for the coming of the Messiah and the rebuilding of the Third Temple. The challenge inherent in this theory is insurmountable. The Temple Mount is home to the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, sites of profound sanctity for the Muslim world. Any excavation, even covertly beneath these structures, is deemed a catastrophic act of political and religious provocation. Thus, the theory remains perpetually locked between faith and geopolitics. For those who subscribe to this belief, the Ark is not lost. It is simply inaccessible, guarded not by golden cherubim, but by the weight of history and the explosive sensitivity of three major world faiths. The Temple Mount tunnels are the silent, unexcavated archive of history, ensuring that this theory will likely remain untested, yet deeply revered, for centuries to come. Archaeological Theory 2, The Secret of Ethiopia. Moving far from the political crucible of Jerusalem, the most dramatic and highly specific claim of the Ark's current location comes from the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. This ancient Christian tradition maintains that the Ark of the Covenant, which they call the Tabbot, has resided in their country for nearly 3 millennia, carefully guarded by a line of dedicated monks. The basis of this belief is chronicled in the Kibra Nagast, The Glory of Kings, a 14th-century Ethiopian national saga. The legend states that the Queen of Sheba visited King Solomon in Jerusalem, resulting in the birth of a son, Menelik I. When Menelik later visited his father, he was entrusted not only with certain sacred relics, but through a mixture of divine intervention and cunning on the part of the Levites, he was said to have stolen the actual Ark of the Covenant and brought it to Ethiopia. The tradition holds that after a journey down the Nile and across the African interior, the Ark was eventually installed in the city of Aksum, its home ever since. Today, the Ark, or Tabbot, is allegedly housed in a small, heavily fortified chapel adjacent to the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Aksum. The Ark is supposedly guarded by a single dedicated monk, the guardian of the Ark, who is permitted to view it and who is consecrated to the role until his death. The Church's dedication to this belief is absolute. Every Ethiopian church maintains a replica tabut on its altar, symbolizing the presence of the true Ark. The challenge for scholars lies in the fact that to maintain its sanctity, the Ark is never seen by outsiders, or even by the Archbishop. This means that while the Ethiopian claim is backed by a powerful, unwavering cultural and religious tradition, it remains entirely without external scientific or historical verification. This theory therefore exists in a realm where faith and history intersect, where the strength of the spiritual conviction outweighs the demands of Western archaeology. Archaeological Theory 3. Other sites and the Dead Sea Scrolls. While the Temple Mount and Ethiopia dominate the discussion, the Ark's long and often turbulent history suggests several other, more obscure but equally plausible locations. Some theories are based on logic, while others spring from fragmentary textual evidence, adding layers to the historical puzzle. The apocryphal Book of 2 Maccabees offers an alternate path, suggesting the prophet Jeremiah took the Ark to Mount Nebo in modern-day Jordan and hid it in a cave, sealing the entrance and declaring that the location would remain unknown until the time of restoration. This idea has spurred expeditions into the caves and hillsides surrounding Mount Nebo, though none have yielded tangible results. Another less-known but historically significant theory points to the Jewish military colony on Elephantine Island in Egypt, where a Jewish temple operated during the Babylonian period. Scholars have speculated that the Ark may have been transported there for safekeeping before the final siege. Perhaps the most intriguing, albeit controversial, piece of textual evidence comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Specifically, the copper scroll found at Qumran, unlike the other spiritual texts, appears to be a meticulous inventory of vast temple treasures. While the scroll's contents are heavily debated, some believe it to be a literal map, others believe it to be folklore. It lists colossal quantities of gold and silver hidden in various places around Jerusalem and Judea. This scroll has fueled the imagination of treasure hunters who believe the inventory might include clues leading to the Ark's secret cache, though the locations are frustratingly vague, using archaic place names. While no theory outside of the Temple Mount or Ethiopia has achieved widespread acceptance, these alternative ideas demonstrate that the Ark's sudden disappearance left a vacuum of information, one that centuries of Jewish and Christian tradition have sought to fill with carefully preserved, localized histories. The modern quest and skepticism. In the 21st century, the search for the Ark of the Covenant has become a complex hybrid of dedicated scholarship, televised sensationalism, and outright fraud. The modern quest, however, is fundamentally characterized by two things: scientific futility and archaeological consensus. But, despite the persistent theories, the vast majority of mainstream historians and archaeologists operate under a strong principle of skepticism. The prevailing academic consensus is devastatingly practical. The Ark, being an object overlaid with gold and fine metalwork, was most likely destroyed and subsequently melted down by the Babylonian invaders. As seasoned military looters, the Babylonians were primarily concerned with the weight of precious metals. The Ark, if still present in the Holy of Holies during the final sacking, would have been the single largest source of gold. The lack of its inclusion in the looted inventory lists suggests that the priests' attempts to hide it failed, and its wooden core was either burned or pulverized, while its gold was smelted. For the scientific community, the mystery is not where is it, but why do people still believe it survived? The ongoing search is further complicated by Ark fever. the tendency for hoaxes and unverified claims to dominate public discourse. Every few decades, an amateur archaeologist or a self-proclaimed psychic claims to have found the true location, only to be debunked by rigorous testing. These recurring sensational claims highlight the inherent danger in searching for an object whose existence is an article of faith rather than verifiable scientific fact. The intellectual integrity of the modern quest, therefore, demands humility and skepticism, requiring researchers to accept the high probability that the ultimate secret of the Ark is that it was destroyed in the fires of VIII. The Lost Ark, the Fulfilled Covenant. Our journey to uncover the fate of the Ark of the Covenant brings us to a conclusion that is less about geography and more about theology. We have confirmed the Ark's unparalleled significance. It was the physical convergence of God's law, his provision, manna, and his priesthood. We have chronicled its spectacular history and analyzed the multitude of compelling, yet ultimately unverified theories regarding its resting place, from the politically sealed tunnels beneath Jerusalem to the guarded chapel in Aksum. The core realization is this: the Ark's greatest mystery is solved, not by finding the box, but by understanding the meaning of its absence. The disappearance of the Ark signaled the end of the physical, geographically bound Old Covenant. The subsequent centuries forced Israel to shift its worship from reliance on a material relic to a more spiritual, heartfelt relationship with God. In Christian theology, the mystery is profoundly fulfilled. The three elements that the Ark contained, the law, the priesthood, and the bread of life, all find their ultimate expression in Jesus Christ. He is the living Word who fulfills the law. He is the eternal high priest who performs the final sacrifice. And he is the bread of life, manna, that sustains humanity eternally. Therefore, the Ark of the Covenant is not lost. It has been superseded and completed by the new covenant. The focus of the faithful is directed away from the relic's gilded wood and toward the spiritual reality it once foreshadowed. The ultimate search for the Ark ends not in an archaeological dig, but in the theological understanding that the ultimate everlasting presence of Jesus is found not in a box, but in the hearts and lives of his followers.